Today I want to talk about a different Christmas match, another match at Christchurch, and it was in, I think, 1997. I was doing really well in the club matches, the Christchurch club matches that year. I'd won the evening series, including winning one match, I think. I'd done well in the club matches. That series wasn't over, that would finish in the new year. But I was doing extremely well. I'd won one match in the summer down at Iford. And we got round to the Christmas match. And back then it was still over 100 pegs with Longham and Dudsbury, and then down at Iford, down to Tuckton and possibly Wick as well. And the river, I think it was a mild day, the river was in good trim, good weights were promised. And back then at Iford Bridge, if you go down there, you've got the old bridge, the old stone bridge, and the new road bridge. The old bridge is closed to traffic. And if you park by the old bridge and walk over it, you will come across a backwater that is used for flood relief. So it comes off the main river above the new bridge, goes under the new bridge, down through to the old bridge, and then rejoins the Stour. So just taking the pressure off that pinch point of a bridge. And back then that backwater would get full of small dace and roach and bleak. Nothing very big, but plenty of small stuff, just stuff like this. Anyway, on the day, that's where I drew. There were just 3 pegs on the backwater between the 2 bridges. And I was fishing all the club matches, as I say, and I thought, well, I'm going to catch some fish. There's always these small dace and bleak, maybe some roach. But I couldn't see a big weight coming out of there. There was an angler whose name I cannot remember, who he said to me, "Where have you drawn?" I said, "I'm right between the bridges, halfway through, about 4 foot of water, not much tidal influence by the time you get up to Iford Bridge on quite a few tides. Some tides it will go up and down a fair bit, but this day it was due to hold fairly steady, just go up and down a little bit." I said, "Oh, it's got to be good for about £5, but I was thinking you're going to want at least £20 to do any good. So what good is £5? He said, "Forget £5, he said. If you go for it, you'll get £15 to £20 of this small stuff." He said, "It's solid with small fish." So it wasn't a place I fished very often. I had fished just below the old bridge on this backwater before and had sort of 10 or 12 pounds, quite a few roach. So the way it was back then, there was quite a nice bank. It came down and then a flat piece of bank, and then almost like fishing a slow moving canal. I'd Mick Connolly on the first peg below the new bridge, the upstream peg, and another angler about 30 yards below me, completely out of sight behind a huge willow bush. And I'm describing it like this because not many years after that it was dredged out again. Because it was fairly slow water, it tended to silt up quite quickly, and because it was flood relief, the EA back then, certainly the drainage people, wanted to keep that flood channel nice and clear. And when they dredged it again, instead of this bank coming down and a nice flat bank, they just made it a steep bank. I don't know what it's like now. It may not be anything like as fishable as it was back then, but back then it was very comfortable, and it was obvious there were little fish topping when I got to my peg. Mick Connolly set up a long pole. I don't know what the guy downstream did, no idea at all, and I couldn't figure out what to do. So I set up a little stick float, a little waggler. Like I say, it's only like a fish in a canal. It's only about 12 yards wide. I set up a pole to fish fairly short with a small rig fairly light rig, and I set up a whip. So I've almost confused myself. When I was, you're allowed in matches nowadays to check your floats out before the start. You mustn't put any bait on or throw any bait in, get your keep net set up. And so I dropped in this little pole rig and I was plumbing the depth and just checked the shot in. And the float bobbed and went under. And there's a 2-ounce roach on there. This is before the start, on a bare hook. And Mick saw me. I said, I haven't even put a bait on yet. And he just laughed. And I said, look, I'm putting it back. And it threw it in clear sight of him. So he knew I didn't put it in the keep net. Anyway, the match started, and I think I started on the stick float, and I was picking up bleak and little dace. It didn't seem quite right, so then I tried the little waggler, and it still seemed to be getting bleak and stuff like that. And I tried the whip, and that was a fairly light rig, and that still wasn't quite right. And then I picked up this pole, which was only about 4 meters, just fishing straight to hand, no shipping it out, nothing like that, which is what Mick was doing. Where Mick was, there was the faster current was quite shallow, came into a sort of pool, and he had a sort of slack either side, very close in and across the other side, and he was fishing into this slack on the other side because it was very shallow in the middle and then a deeper sort of hole either side, about 3 foot. So he was going on about 10 meters of pole, dropping it into this pool, which is quite a slow way to fish in a way. But having fished for about 35-40 minutes, and by then I've probably had 30 or 40 fish, I've settled on the pole, 4 meters to hand on the pole, and it still wasn't quite right. I think what I need is a more positive rig. I need something a little bit heavier. So the great thing about pole fishing, and back then I was far more organised than I am now, is that you can look at your rig and say, right, I want a rig of 4 meters to hand. Let's move up from probably 0.3 of a gram to about 0.6 of a gram, something more positive, get the bait down quickly. And that was what I was looking for, much more positive fishing. And then I got my head down. It was a question of feeding, banging out these dace, lots and lots of small dace, only like this, which is not very big really. But I'm catching fast, and in between, every so often I'm getting, every sort of 4th or 5th fish might be a bleak, but they're quite small. The dace are definitely slightly bigger. And I carried on till the end of the match. Nothing very exciting, just keep feeding, keep fishing hard. In the last time on match fishing memories that I talked about, a Christchurch Christmas match, I talked about being oblivious to what's going on. And in that case, it was the angler downstream of me, was happily fishing a feeder, not catching anything. The anglers below him, they all thought it was rubbish and it had turned on, and he couldn't see me. This time round, it was me that was oblivious. I knew Mick Connolly was catching, but I was easily out catching him. And the end of the match came round, and went up to, the scales came round eventually. Quite complicated round there because there were people fishing on the river between the bridges as well, and above and below Iford Bridge. Where the scales came from, I have no idea, but they found us all right. And Mick weighed in 11 pounds, which was okay, but it was going to be a day of, on the main river, there were going to be some big weights, definitely some seriously big weights. And without, you were really looking for 20 pounds, and I was fairly confident of having that. So I weighed in, and I'd had around about 400 dace. Told you they weren't that big. And probably over 100 bleak. Just a couple of little roach. So I'd caught one accidentally before the start on a bare hook, but just a couple, maybe a tiny chublet or two. I don't know, 1 or 2 bits and pieces like that. And my over 500 fish weighed 34 pounds. And I thought, that's pretty good. We got down to the angler below the bush, who I couldn't really see. And bear in mind, when you're catching over 500 fish in 5 hours, so getting on for not quite 2 a minute, you're not spending all your time looking round, what's he doing, what's he doing? You're focused, got this nice rhythm going, don't waste time, keep going. You don't go for a walk, you don't have a coffee, you just go in for it. And because of the bush, I just couldn't see him. I couldn't believe he wasn't catching. The fish must have been, I don't know, about graded, because I didn't get any fish the size of the ones he were catching. Great big clonking dace. And we weighed him in. And when he lifted his net, I thought, oh, I'm a bit worried here. It wasn't quite that bad. He had 27 pounds of good dace. He probably didn't have much over 100 fish. They were just much better fish than the ones I had, and probably up to half a pound. Again, very few roach, if any roach. I don't remember seeing roach in his catch. We got back to the draw, and quite how good it was revealed. I had won the match. The guy next to me was second with 27 pounds, but there were a whole load of good weights on the pony fields and above Iford, between 20 and 25 pounds. I think there was some good fish caught up at Longham, but not big weights, double figure weights. But so that was my second win in the Christchurch Christmas Match. It was far better than I'd expected before the start of the match. I really thought initially £5, and then when whoever this guy was, whose name will come back to me one day at random, when he said £15 to £20, at that point, when I did start to catch these small fish quickly, I could concentrate on really going for it, as opposed to just plodding along catching 10 or 12 pounds of small stuff, which is one of the traps you can fall into with small fish. If you're going to get a big weight, you've got to go for it. No wasting time. You've got to work out how to keep them coming for a long time and catch them quickly for a long time. Hope you've enjoyed this. I did nothing clever fishing wise, but it was a very enjoyable win. One of the weird things about that win was it was good to win it, but as far as the Christchurch Club Championship was concerned, it counted for nothing. It was a match on its own. It wasn't in the points overall for the season. But in the last 2 matches of the season, I got a section win and a second in section. So I did win the championship. And so I got a sort of clean sweep. There was another cup which was on selected matches. I think I was second in that one, but so I was club champion, evening series champion, and Christmas match champion. So come the prize giving, I had 3 trophies out of the 4 that were going. Until next time, that's it for now.